Good morning, everyone. I hope you're having an awesome Earth Day. Welcome to our April edition of Plants, Pests, and Pathogens. My name is Araya April. I am your new State Extension Master Gardener Program Assistant. So Charlotte, our wonderful state program manager, is attending the National Extension Conference on Volunteerism in Portland, Maine this week. So I am here in her stead. Do not worry. A little about me. In 2019, I certified as an EMG volunteer in Durham County, and I really fell in love with our program and our community. And as a volunteer, I was lucky enough to work with Caroline Richardson. And Caroline previously held this program assistant role. So she has very big shoes to fill. I'm going to try my best, but I'm so excited to be serving the statewide program in this way. If it helps you to remember, my name Araya rhymes with Mariah. So let's do a quick overview of today's agenda. In a moment, we're going to do pests and diseases of berries. And after their presentation, Matt and Mike are going to roll right into our BOLOs. Those are the pests and diseases to be currently on the lookout for. Then we're going to wrap up with plant these for pollinators and a few pre-recorded program announcements from Charlotte Glunn. So that is going to get us to 11:30 a.m. First, an important announcement before we get started. Along with today being Earth Day, it is National Volunteer Week. So it's a great time to formally celebrate the hard work of our dedicated volunteers. And here you're going to see 4 pivotal ways that our fantastic volunteers grow North Carolina. These are the activities that make a profound impact in the communities across our state. So we educate North Carolinians in a multitude of ways. That includes in-person or online classes and workshops, and through our info lines and our plant clinics. Local gardeners are able to improve their sustainable gardening practices thanks to our expertise and thanks to our education. We also grow healthy communities by demonstrating for residents of all ages, young, not so young, the therapeutic benefits of gardening and how to use plants to strengthen their well-being. And we continue to grow both the reach and the impact of our extension resources, like the Plant Toolbox and so many research projects that sometimes offer the only source of science-based information our North Carolina communities can rely on. Our volunteers also grow healthy ecosystems, getting their hands dirty right there beside local gardeners in our demonstration gardens, in our community gardens, so many places, making a real difference that local gardeners can see, that they can understand, and then they can put into practice on their own. So we just wanted to say happy Volunteer Week to all of our Extension Master Gardener volunteers. We see you. You carry out our mission every day. We are so grateful for you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Matt Bertone and Mike Munster for a deep dive into pests and plant diseases of some of our most delicious crops, along with tips on how to identify common problems affecting berries, strawberries, raspberries, blueberries, and blackberries in North Carolina. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so Mike or Matt can start sharing yours.
Great. Thanks, Araya.
Mhm.
Really nice to have you here. And, yeah, Caroline had big shoes to fill, but no worries. I think you're going to do a great job, and we're really excited to have you. So,
Thank you.
all right. So let's get right into it. Okay. So, today, there's lots of things out there that are called berries. And so today, we are going to share information on pests and diseases of 3 particular types of berries. And when we say berries, that could actually be kind of confusing. So we're going to be talking about blueberries, strawberries, and blackberries and whatnot today. But if you see on this slide, there's a kind of wide range of these plants out there. So first, the blueberries are also in the same genus as cranberries, huckleberries, lingonberries, and that's the genus Vaccinium in the family Ericaceae, which is called the heath family. They are woody shrub. They don't spread out typically. They do grow, but they don't kind of spread to create big barriers or walls or anything like that. They are perennial. And this is actually the only one we're talking about today that is actually considered botanically a true berry. It's a single flower, a single fruit, and ovary. Um, the next group we're going to talk about are the strawberries, and they are in the genus Fragaria. There's several species. These are in the family Rosaceae. These are low-growing plants and do spread. They're kind of herbaceous, but do get very thick and almost woody. They are perennials, but they're grown as annuals. That's why that asterisk is there. So they're harvested each year and planted each year in North Carolina. Um, and the fruit, actually, the thing that we eat is called the receptacle and is actually part of the petiole, the tip of the petiole near the calyx. And those little seeds, what people might call strawberry seeds, are actually the fruits. And these are called achenes. So that's the true fruit of the strawberry, not the red part that we'd like to eat. Uh, then finally, we've got the blackberries, raspberries, dewberries, etc. These are plants in the genus Rubus, and they are also in the family Rosaceae, like strawberry. They are woody or herbaceous canes, and they do spread typically. They are perennial plants, so popping up every year. And what they have is called a drupe. And actually, technically, each one of the little parts of this whole berry are drupes. And so we call them druplets because they're all in a group. So each of those is a fruit, just like a blueberry is its own fruit. So it's really kind of strange, and this is kind of our way to kind of tell you about these. And there are lots of other berries out there, elderberries, all different things like that. But we're really going to be focusing on these days. So, but before we started, I wanted to launch a couple polls. And so the first one, what we want to do is ask you, do you grow this in your yard? So the first poll is going to be for blueberries, and I will launch that in a second. And basically, just say yes, you grow blueberries, or no, you don't grow blueberries. Let's see. Let me end that one. Okay, let's see. Relaunch poll. Okay, so please answer yes or no if you grow blueberries in your yard. And I don't know, Mike, do you want to put the numbers for each in the chat just so we know we have a
I'm
recording of it?
I'm writing them down here and I will tally them up for everyone.
Perfect, perfect. So we'll give everybody, well, we got 112 of 151 participants at 74%. Let's give it another 10 seconds or so, and then we will end the poll. Okay, we're going to end this poll now. And it looks like 69% of people grow blueberries at home, and about 31% do not. All right. Mike, you got that recorded, I'm assuming?
I got the 69 and we can figure out the 31 by
Uh,
a difference. So
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so let's stop share this poll. Okay, and we'll end this one. And then what we're gonna do is now for strawberries, we're gonna relaunch that poll. And if you grow strawberries at home, yes. If not, no.
in hindsight, and it would have taken a lot of time, it would have been very interesting to see this broken down by physiographic region, see mountains,
Mm-hmm.
Piedmont versus coast, and how those.
Yeah. All right, so let's give it another 10 seconds or so.
We've already beat our response. There were only 118 who responded to the blueberry one. Now we're up to
Yeah.
122. So
All right, we'll end the poll there. And so we've got 43% yes, 57% no. All right. And then let's okay. And then we're
got it.
gonna relaunch this poll. Sorry, I'm messing around with this. Relaunch this poll for blackberries, raspberries, dewberries, or any of those rubus species. Okay. Well, I can tell you while the answers are coming in that I have blueberries and blackberries at home. No strawberries yet. Although we just did plant some strawberries that we got for fun. Just who knows if they're gonna make it. All right, so we're gonna end the poll in about 10 seconds. All right. All right, let's end the poll and share the results. So we got 46% yes, 54% no for raspberries, blackberries. Very surprising to me, I will say. Me and Mike, I think. So, all right. Well, thank you for that interaction. And now we know kind of have an idea about this. So I'm going to start with some pests of these things. So let me see. Okay. So pests of berries or berry plants. Um, so I'm going to first start out with some things that are common to basically all of these. So spider mites, they're very common pests on lots of different plants. They cause stippling damage and the leaves may become chlorotic or bronze like you see here. High densities can produce this noticeable webbing. That's why they're called spider mites. And you can often find the shed skins, these little white shed skins on the bottoms of the undersides of the leaves. They will attack all these plants, but I rarely see it on blueberry. They are very common on strawberries and can be on caneberries too. But I would say strawberries are by far the most preferred for spider mites of these berry plants. Spotted wing Drosophila is a fairly recent pest. It's only been the last 20 years that it's been here in the U.S. This is related to the fruit fly that you see in your kitchen, but those fruit flies feed on decaying vegetable matter. These actually, the females have this sharp saw-like ovipositor, which they can use to pierce fruits, ripe fruits. So they lay their eggs directly in fruits. Their maggots live in the fruits. They're very tiny little maggots. These are identified. The males have these large, diffuse black spots on the black spot on each wing, and the females have this saw-like ovipositor. The maggots burrowing into the fruits will spoil them, and they're very common in the environment, so very difficult to get rid of. I would say caneberry is most important host for these, then strawberry, then blueberry. Japanese beetles, the larvae can feed on the roots of plants and the adults can feed on the foliage. They do feed on a lot of different things, so they're kind of just out there. And so that's just another one that you might see. Aphids are very common on these plants. They're small sucking insects, of course. They will produce honeydew and they will grow sooty mold on them. So that can be a sign that you have them. Or you'll see the shed skins or or things like that, or the actual aphids themselves. They may transmit viruses to plants. And I would say they're more common in strawberries than caneberries than blueberries. This one is strawberry aphid specific to strawberries, Ketosyphon minor. Thrips are also common to all these, although I would say they're kind of more common to strawberries and caneberries. But small sucking insects, these little yellow sucking insects, they cause white or silvery patches on leaves. And if they feed on the fruit, they can cause distortion or kind of crinkling of the fruit. And they may transmit TSWV, tomato spot wilt virus, to plants. And finally, birds. So birds love berries, of course. I mean, who doesn't? So they are very difficult to control. In fact, it's illegal to kill birds. It's also difficult to predict and to catch them at the right time. But some people do use bird netting over their plants that are actively producing fruit. So sometimes people have to deal with birds, unfortunately, or other vertebrates like squirrels or rodents, things like that, feeding on the berries. All right, so let's go now into some specific groups on specific plants. So these are specific blueberry pests, and blueberry pests can affect the leaves, the crown or roots, the buds, and fruit. So blueberries are woody, bushes, shrubs. They do get a lot of scale insects. One included is the Indian wax scale. There's lots of them that infest blueberries. I'll show you the whole list next slide. But they do appear sporadically. Although infestations can be severe, it's usually not the case. You usually get them kind of here or there on the stems and twigs. They do suck sap and may produce large quantities of honeydew depending on the group. Armor scales will not, but the wax scales and the soft scales like this will. And there are a lot of species that are on blueberries. Now, this is worldwide, all the species of scales that have been found on vaccinium. This is blueberries, cranberries, all those things. So it is a big list, but I would say they're common, but they're not a huge pest. Also, I should mention here that a lot of these pests are more common in production where you have tons and tons of the plants attracting these pests. So in home landscapes, you may not see many of these pests at all that we're talking about today. But here's an interesting one, the pulvinaria type cottony scales. This is Bill Klein down in Castle Hayne on blueberries. We've been seeing some outbreaks of these scales, these flat coin-like scales produce these long waxy ova sacs, which are basically where the eggs are produced. And so they can be very noticeable once they produce these. And if you have infestations, there are ways to treat them. Okay, another blueberry pest are the Prianus beetles. These are longhorn beetles, very large, roach-like longhorn beetles, up to about 2 inches or more in size. Um, they're very noticeable, the adults, of course, but it's actually the larvae that are the pest. So the larvae live and feed in the roots or base of living woody plants. So this can be lots of different types of woody plants and bushes and whatnot out there, but blueberries are one of those. And so they will attack them, and they're a well-known pest in blueberries. They may not be noticed at first, but can actually cause the death of the plants when they bore too much in the base of it. They are very difficult to prevent from infesting plants. And in fact, we were trying to get some research going here at NC State in commercial blueberries, but that's still underway. And luckily, they're not too common in the home landscape. But what you would look for is basically dead or dying plants. And unfortunately, you have to destructively sample for these, but you would see in the base of the plant when you pull it up a very large gallery and these huge beetle grubs, a couple of 2 to 3 inches long. So huge beetle grubs. And this is why they're so destructive to the plants. And here you can see a patch of those being affected. Another beetle pest of blueberries is the stem borer, this longhorn beetle in the genus Oberia myops. Um, I'm going to have you remember that. So just remember this genus Oberia. You can see the little tiny spots on its pronotum. This is why it's probably myops, little eyes. And also called the azalea stem borer or rhododendron stem borer. And that is, of course, because azalea and rhododendron are in the family Ericaceae and they're close relatives of blueberries. They emerge late in the spring, and the females, what they do is they girdle the stem, they chew around the stem, and then they lay an egg in between the girdles, and the larva then hatches, and this grub-like larva hatches and bores down the center of the stalk of that stem, and it will bore down to the base of the plant and can wilt those stems and sometimes and kill those stems. The only way to find them is to look for the damage or know that they're there, or you can split open the stems to find the grubs. And they overwinter as the larva and may develop over 3 years. So it takes a while sometimes for them to develop. So this is the blueberry stem borer or the azalea stem borer. Just one quick one I'm going to mention about one mite of blueberry. It's not very common. I've never seen it, but there is an eriophyid mite, this little worm-like mite that basically feeds on the flower buds. And as it feeds, its saliva is toxic and causes those flower buds to get crinkly and distorted. It can look like herbicide damage or some other issues or cold freeze damage. But you would have to search for these little tiny mites, and you can certainly send in photos or samples if you find them ever and need to confirm that it's the mites or not. But it's a fairly rare pest. I've never seen it, but maybe you have. Now, feeding on the foliage, maybe some prominent moths. These are caterpillars in the genus Daytana, which is a nododontid caterpillar or moth. The moths, the adult moths, are this brown dead leaf looking things, but the larvae are these large 2 inch long caterpillars that are often brightly colored with hairs. They rear up and kind of emit gross stuff in their mouth to protect themselves from birds and predators. A few species will feed on vaccinium, including the azalea prominent, Daytana major down here, and the Drexel's prominent here, Drexeli. These were both on a wild vaccinium on the same plant, two different species. They're usually found in late spring through summer, and they do feed in small groups as young as newborns on a single leaf. And then as they get older, they start to spread out and eat more foliage because these very large hungry caterpillars are going to need food, and so they'll feed on a lot of leaves. But these can be picked off by hand or whatnot. And as a reminder, we don't talk much about control in this. The best thing to do is to search for fact sheets on these pests. But identification is the most important step to identifying how to manage them. Okay, another blueberry pest that's a caterpillar is the cherry fruit worm. They feed on various fruits, thus the name. And these caterpillars are small, pinkish or reddish. These adults, these kind of pretty little adults, emerge in the spring and they lay their eggs on the leaves and fruit. The caterpillars then bore into the fruits, and the fruits may prematurely ripen, and so you might notice the infestation then. And as they grow older, they'll go to nearby berries and feed on them as well. And then they'll pupate, they'll settle nearby and pupate the following spring to become an adult moth that will go mate and lay eggs near the fruit again. And not just the cherry fruit worm, but there is the cranberry fruit worm. So this is a green caterpillar, a bit larger. It's a different family. It's a pyralid, not a tortricid. It does feed on various fruits also, and in fact, almost all this text is copied from the previous slide, except for this caterpillar often produces a lot more silk and frass around those berry clusters, and so that could be a sign that you have the cranberry fruit worm feeding inside those berries. A beetle pest of the berries is the plum curculio. As its name suggests, it's not just a pest of blueberries, but also of stone fruits and apples and plums and things like that. They will, it's a weevil and it will lay its eggs. The adults lay their eggs in the fresh fruit. They create often this V or fan-shaped egg-laying scar. And the larvae are legless grubs, white legless grubs with a little head capsule that feed within the fruit. And so, of course, these can be destructive. All right, so that was the blueberry pests. I know I'm going pretty quickly, but I want to make sure that Mike has some time to go over the pathogens. But let's go over a few strawberry pests. Now, strawberry pests can affect the leaves, crowns, or roots, and the seeds and/or fruit. Um, The first one is a strawberry clipper weevil. This is a weevil, as I said, very small, only an eighth of an inch long, and they do attack several small fruits. But they're called the clipper weevil because the female will chew a hole into flowers, developing flowers, lay an egg, and then clip the petiole of it, either completely severing it or it lays hanging off the plant. This flower head then dies, and the young larva, this again, because it's a weevil, it's a legless grub-like larva with a head capsule, will feed in that dead flower head, either on the ground or hanging from the plant. The adults then emerge in the summer and they actually kind of hang out for a while, feeding on a couple things, but then they overwinter in debris. So near woods and natural areas is where you most commonly find these in relation to the strawberries. But they will overwinter as an adult, come out in the spring, start the life cycle over again. This is somewhat uncommon pest. I don't really see it very often, let's just say in home landscapes. All right. Another bug pest of strawberries, a true bug, are the lygus bugs or the tarnished plant bug. There are also other hemiptera that might cause these symptoms, but I'm just going to focus on the tarnished plant bug, Lygus linealaris. Um, these are sucking insects, so they can't chew on the plants. But what they do, and here's a picture of the adult of one of them. They may feed on the developing seeds, which are actually what we talked about are the fruit of the strawberry. And as it's ripening, if they feed on those, it'll cause the distortion called cat facing. And it may not ripen properly. It'll be all knobby and unequally developed. Um, and this can be associated with these lygus bugs, but also it can mimic abiotic factors like deformation from improper pollination or cold or things like that. These bugs also overwinter as adults, so debris near the area can help them overwinter, so removing that might help as well. All right, sap beetles are sometimes associated with strawberries, but and there's several species that do that. They're generally small beetles, roundish or flat. They have this clubbed antenna, and the larvae are kind of caterpillar-like grubs with usually with kind of spikes or plates on the back, spikes on the tip of the tail. And these are going to be typically a problem in overripe fruit or rotting fruit. They really love that. But if you leave a lot of this fruit rotting or overripe in the system, that'll attract these beetles and they may spill over and damage some of the less rotted fruit and more just ripe fruit that you want to eat. So these are something that we're mainly going to be feeding on decaying fruit, not the live stuff. Okay, finally, let's talk about some bramble or caneberry pests. So these can affect the stems, leaves, crown, or roots, and the fruit. Now, one thing I should mention is that old canes of these plants can provide really good homes for stem nesting wasps, bees, and others. And in fact, Dr. Elsie Youngstead and Dr. Hannah Levinson, I think a couple years ago, gave a talk on habitats for native bees. So go check out that talk, and it has some tips on doing this. But leaving some of those canes can be really helpful for nesting for native bees and wasps that nest inside those hollow stems. All right, the first pest of raspberries and blackberries is the raspberry crown borer. This is a clearwing moth, although if you look at this, it does not look like a moth at all. These are very conspicuous day-flying yellow jacket mimics. And you can tell that it's a moth because it's got scales on the wings and scales on the body. The antennae are a little thicker and a little different, but it's a very convincing mimic of a yellow jacket. But the females emerge late summer, early fall. They then lay eggs under the leaves. The larvae hatch and crawl down the plant to the base of the plant and bore in. And these caterpillars are white and grub-like. They will have little crochets on under their abdominal segments, these little kind of rows of hooks or little spikes. But otherwise, they kind of look like a beetle larva, but they bore into the base of these rubus, the raspberries and blackberries plants. They'll develop over 2 years where they'll emerge the second year. And the larval activity can cause wilting of the canes and sometimes the plant death, depending on the size of the plant and the degree of infestation and destruction. A beetle pest of the canes, typically kind of sometimes lower down, but sometimes higher up on the canes, is the redneck cane borer. This is a metallic wood boring beetle that feeds on live plants. The adults will feed on the leaves. They're very small though, about a quarter of an inch long, black except for this bronzy red neck where they get their name. The females will lay the eggs on the cane, and the larva hatches and bores in, and the larva will then spiral around the outside of the cane, and this actually causes this spindle-shaped swelling that can be seen outside. So this is one pest where if you see that swelling, you break it open, you see some of these galleries, you know you probably have redneck cane borer. Most swellings, like I said, occur near the ground level, but they can be up above, and they can girdle or kill the cane or make it weaken so the wind breaks it. And like I said, the adults will also feed on foliage. All right. So this is another caneberry pest. This is called the raspberry blank blank. Now, I told you to remember that. The genus is Oberia. So it looks very similar. It's got the little tiny spots here, very similar to what we said before. But does anybody want to tell me what the name is? All right. This might be a tough one, but it's in the So it's not Oberia myops. This is a different species, and actually, there's other species that are called this raspberry blankback. But because it's in the genus Oberia and they're close relatives, they actually do the same thing, but just to a different plant. So instead of being the blueberry cane borer, these are the raspberry cane borer. And so it's funny because they're related insects, their behavior is very similar. So the raspberry cane borer will girdle the stem and then lay an egg inside that girdle. And then the larva bores down the stem of the base plant, killing or wilting the stem, just like the azalea, rhododendron, or blueberry cane borer or twig borer. So this does overwinter as a larva and may develop over 2 years. So this is another longhorn beetle pest of stems. All right, now I think finally a couple caneberry pests that are mites, so eriophyid mites. So you may hear about these sometimes. These are microscopic worm-like mites. I talked about the blueberry bud mite, but these are the redberry mite up top and the dryberry mite. Now these mites are very tiny, a quarter of a millimeter long, so you're not gonna be able to see them even with the hand lens. But if you send those in to me, I can look for them. Now, the red berry mite overwinters in buds and scales of the plant and infests the fruit as it develops. And the saliva causes these drupelets not to mature. They stay red and hard, and that's why they're called the red berry mite. The dryberry mite, on the other hand, feeds both on the leaves and the fruit. The leaves may have spots or yellowing, while the fruit failed to develop and become dry and hard. And both may mimic abiotic damage. So they may mimic sun scald or some other types of damage. So it's difficult to tell whether this is something abiotic or is actually from one of these mites. And again, the mites are very small. I will say growers send me the berries often. Apparently, the mites are much more common in the green berries. As the berries mature, they're less commonly found in there. So even finding them after the fact might be difficult. And my final thing to mention is pollination. So we talked about all these plants and the pests of these things, but please note that all of these plants have at least one component of their pollination by insects, if not all of it. So strawberries are pollinated by a combination of selfing, wind, and insects. So insects are involved. Blueberries are pollinated only by insects, particularly bees. And so there's even a blueberry bee in North Carolina. It specifically pollinates vaccinium. And then cranberries are pollinated by wind or insects. And you can see caneberries. You can see this bee in the flower of a wild blackberry, covered in pollen. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and let Mike talk about some diseases. And I will try and answer in the comments some of the answers.
All right. Matt, I have a question for you though.
Oh gosh, I probably said something wrong, I'm sure. What do you have? Okay.
Who am I? Who am I to suggest you said anything wrong? No, my question is this. This is a future-looking question.
Mhm.
Will any of these be hammered by if and when the day comes we have spotted wing lanternfly in
Yeah,
our
spotted
area?
lanternfly. Yeah,
Or
so
spotted lanternfly, excuse me.
yeah, I don't know. We will have it in our area at some point. Everybody will see it at some point, unfortunately. But I would say they're not. I don't think they're very prolific. So they feed on a lot of different plants, but they don't do well on a lot of plants. I think they will feed on some of them or just be resting on them, but I don't know that they're going to actually affect them. They're more of a nuisance than anything. So, but yeah, that's a great question. Grapes is the major issue. We didn't talk about grapes today, even though they're kind of berries. Maybe we'll have a whole grape session sometime. But yeah, grapes are the most susceptible of all the plants that we know that are really important to them. So, but these I've not heard much about them being a big issue. But great question.
All right, let me share a screen. Well, let's see. How many folks have we still got tuned in here? Excuse me.
There's a good question for you, Mike. The last question, and you can maybe come around to that later on in the chat.
All right, let me see here. Wait. Of course, I have lost my, there we go. Let me just make myself aware of it while I say thank you to, still have 181 people. So people who were interested in elderberries and gooseberries and things that we're not talking about did not drop off in great numbers. So great. In the chat here, we have strawberry with HOX gene mutation. I am not aware of that. Okay, I'll have to look that one up at some point. So I want to begin with a mystery photo here. Maybe some of you have already thought about putting your thoughts in the chat. Oh, that was strawberry with HOX. Okay, I see what you were answering. Ali Rosenberg was answering my
I
question. So,
and the one I wanted to put your attention to is why are currants and gooseberries not allowed to be grown in North Carolina? So I'll let you answer that one.
okay. They are alternate hosts of important rust diseases. So in order to protect our wheat and our white pines, those are not to be planted. Or buckthorn back home, which has a berry. I don't know if that's a technically a berry. Anyway, so a couple of people said it was strawberry. A couple of people said, or one person said geranium. Are they not native? Yes. Some of those, of course, plants are native, but that doesn't mean it's a good idea to plant them because of the risk of them being alternate hosts for these rust diseases. And I'll mention a little bit about rust diseases later, and if we have time, maybe we can talk about that. So while the rest of you ponder this, let us move on to some thoughts about berries. All right. Disease and disorders of caneberries, blueberries, and strawberries. I may use caneberries, I may use brambles to refer collectively to the rubus. But I want to start out with something, as Matt did. He started out with common problems of these berries, and the one that I want to highlight is herbicide injury, which can occur on any kind of berry. You'll notice that some of these symptoms could be confused for viruses, so be careful that you don't jump to the conclusion of a virus until you've considered and asked about herbicide applications. The one possibility that you could have, like with this blueberry on the right, is a glyphosate application made the previous year. The chemical can overwinter in the plant tissue and then cause symptoms at leaf out the following year. I was reading a comment from Bill Klein about a sample and where he mentioned that blueberries usually recover from herbicide injury, but it may take a year or more. And if one of the more the stronger brush killer type herbicides is used, then you may have to actually replace that plant. So don't allow herbicide applications to contact not just leaves, but also green stems. And also, as we saw in this case, and I showed this in a previous PP&P, I think it was when Joe Neal was presenting actually, herbicide injury on these raspberries, where notice how clean the soil is out along the outside of that raised bed, and you see some even of the canes starting to pop up there. So there could have been root uptake from shallow roots there outside the bed, or I suppose even some of those shoots that were coming up. And you have, in this case, some witch's broom type symptoms on the new growth. So be very careful with your herbicide applications around your berries. And I will start with caneberries as far as the actual diseases. I'll mostly talk about blackberries, although my personal favorite is raspberry. And just a little note of trivia and personal connection here. So my mom lives in Hopkins, Minnesota, which is a 4 square mile suburb with about 20,000 residents outside of Minneapolis, which is nowadays famous as the hometown of Paige Beckers, and who's starting in the WNBA, WNBA, excuse me, in May, and they renamed the town for her for one day, her first day there. But before, it had the claim that it was the raspberry capital of the world, and you'll see a raspberry on their water tower if you ever go and visit. Third weekend of July, by the way, Raspberry Festival. But again, we're going to be focused a little bit more on the blueberries that are more common and popular here. The cane blight is one of the diseases that you may run across. The fungus that causes it, Coniotherium fucellii. I may have used the term or the name Paraconiotherium fucellii on this program at some point in the past, but it appears, at least per Mycobank, that that is an illegitimate name. And you'll notice that death of canes, right? And upon closer inspection, you'll see that sharp transition zone between the dead portion, the live portion. You see it getting down below the surface here. And if you look very closely, you'll see the small dark fruiting bodies where the spores are oozed out. And these will be favored by rain splash and also, of course, wetness favoring infection. So if you are pruning your blackberries, be sure and well, try to do it on a day that you're not expecting rain for another 4 days or so. The fungus overwinters, and we didn't talk about the primocane floricane distinction, but it'll overwinter in the primocanes that the second year become the floricanes, the fruit-bearing ones. And pruning wounds are sites of infection on those primocanes. So avoid pruning when it's going to rain. I'll put a link in the resources page to some more information about this disease, which can be quite destructive. Another commonly seen set of diseases really on our blackberries are orange rust and cane and leaf rust, two different fungi, or three. In the case of orange rust, there could be a couple of genera involved, but there is a big difference in how they behave. The orange rust is systemic, and it'll show up with the first growth, generally only on the leaves, and it'll have deformation, cause deformation of that new growth, and there'll be waxy looking orange pustules on the underside of the leaves. Versus the cane and leaf rust, which, while it can occur earlier in the season, or can occur early in the season also, you will have a lighter colored, more of a yellowish colored pustule, drier looking, and can occur on leaves and canes. I'll show that in a moment. Of the two, the one that you would be most concerned about would be the orange rust because it is systemic in the plant, so therefore more destructive. Here is a photograph of the pustules of cane and leaf rust on actually a cane. Viruses of brambles. These are a big problem which can shorten the productive life of the planting. And it's combinations of viruses in blackberries that produce symptoms that are collectively known as blackberry yellow vein disease, BYVD. And you can see a couple of variations on some of these symptoms, sort of oak leaf chlorosis, more of a traditional mosaic, somewhat concentrated along the veins, some bright chlorotic or yellow spots, and viruses associated with these diseases can be, according to a 2004 publication, transmitted by, wait for it, pollen, nematodes, aryaphyid mites, whiteflies, thrips, and mealybugs, amongst others. So there are a number of possible vectors here. If you have only one of the viruses present, well, first of all, you may have fewer or no symptoms, but also it would be easier to manage than if you've got multiple viruses with different vectors. And here are a few of the well-known ones in our area, what Christy Almeida wrote as the locally occurring canary viruses. So there's blackberry virus E, blackberry virus Y, E presumably by mites transmitted what I was reading, and I think seed and pollen in the case of the blackberry virus Y. I don't know if others have been identified. With the blackberry yellow vein associated virus, we're talking about whitefly vectors with blackberry leaf mottle associated virus, aryaphyid mites, and a mealybug for the blackberry vein banding associated virus. One combination to mention would be it is pretty serious if you have the combination of the second and third on the list here, the blackberry virus Y and the yellow vein associated virus. These, of course, are systemic in the plant and incurable, so it will eventually have to be removed if you start seeing that decline. Whether or not there's an advantage to removing something as soon as symptoms are seen, I have not looked into that. Just a few other bramble or caneberry diseases to mention, but I won't go into in depth. Phytophthora root rot can occur on raspberry. We don't see it on blackberry. And in commercial settings, we have seen downy mildew on blackberry, which is the same downy mildew that gets on rose, interestingly. And we've seen fusarium wilt. I wouldn't probably expect downy mildew to become a problem. It's been around in home plantings. I think that's going to probably remain a commercial issue, but fusarium wilt is one to kind of keep an eye on. Switching to blueberry now, and I call it disease and disorders here because the first one I want to mention is not a disease at all, but essentially a nutritional problem. So this is from a nursery, but it could happen to you. And the comment from Bill and that particular sample was yellowing and stunting are likely due to a combination of high pH, 5.8, high carbonates, of being the irrigation water, and possible drought stress earlier in the year. So blueberries really love that low soil pH. If you're seeing chlorosis like this, that will be one of the first things to check is your pH getting too high? Moving on to the actual diseases, here's one that's pretty striking, the Exobasidium leaf and fruit spot caused by the fungus Exobasidium maculatum, so macula meaning spot. And these will be yellowish on the upper surface of the leaf, but pure white on the underneath. On the fruit, it'll cause spots that won't ripen. The commercial operations will spray for this, but since you can't predict the severity from one year to the next, homeowners probably don't need to do that. And I'll drop a link to some more information about this in the resources page. So a quick, Matt, could you launch a poll?
Sure thing.
A
Which one?
true false.
Okay. True false. Let's see.
Or do I have to do it since I'm sharing?
I don't know. Let's see. I'm trying to find where. Oh, here we go. There you go. True false.
Thank you.
No problem.
So the question is, looks like everyone's already read it already. Or the statement is the homeowner should start fungicide sprays as soon as these symptoms are first observed. And we see these pretty terrible looking blueberry fruits. We'll give another 5 seconds or so. A lot of people have strong feelings about this one. All right, we've reached 100 folks. Let's end the poll and share the results. So by a almost 4-1 margin, we have false as the answer. And in fact, false is the correct response. The reason is, and maybe those folks knew, that it's way too late. Infection occurred back during the bloom time. And there are some strategies that we can use against this, which I will talk about a little bit. But first, let's talk about the life cycle, which is really interesting. The disease, of course, is mummyberry, and it causes berries to become these hard, almost mini, tiny pumpkin shaped things that will, they're pseudosclerotia, they're called. That's how it oversummers and then overwinters. It can stay viable in the soil for years. And then in the springtime, they'll produce these tiny apothecia, they're called. They're mushroom-like fleshy structures. You can see them coming up around the edge of it here that produce airborne spores that will go and infect young shoots. And this leaf, twig, flower blight phase will then produce a different kind of spore, conidia, that will be transmitted to the flowers and cause the fruit infections later on. So whether or not the fruits can be infected by, I think they are infected from the conidia, a different kind of spore that's produced on the shoot symptoms. Interestingly enough, if you were a bee looking at the dead leaves in the ultraviolet range of the spectrum, they might look like blueberry flowers. So it tricks them into visiting those and picking up the spores instead of pollen. Once the fruits develop more, you initially won't see the symptoms, but instead of turning blue and ripe and nice, they will turn kind of cream colored to pink and then shrivel up and drop off and become the mummified pseudosclerotia on the soil surface. So what is one to do? Well, one thing is to plant some cultivars, choose cultivars that are less susceptible to the disease. Avoid introducing mummies with your planting stock. So dormant bare root is best to start with that. If it's potted material, remove the loose debris and so forth on the top of the pot before you plant. If you do have the disease, rake up or bury those mummies, and bury can be as simple as spreading mulch to keep those spores from getting up into the air and reaching the foliage in the spring, and making timely fungicide applications. For other fruit rots on blueberry, there's no need to do any kind of sprays. Well, you may not for mummyberry, even if you don't have it, but the trick is to harvest frequently enough that the berries don't get overripe and start rotting from these other fungi, excuse me. So timely and complete harvesting is your strategy for the other fruit rots. Quickly mentioning a few others that can occur on blueberry: powdery mildew, Bactris canker. These are nothing new, but it has been a few years now since bacterial leaf scorch, Xylella fastidiosa, showed up in blueberries in North Carolina. It had been present elsewhere. So that is something to at least keep at the back of your mind. And then I don't know what's going to happen here, but we have had now last year one case of southern bacterial wilt in blueberry in a commercial operation. So that is another one to possibly be concerned about. Not at the moment for the homeowner, but stay tuned. It has been present elsewhere, like in Florida before. That's what the photo is from that bacterial wilt field. Moving on to strawberries, and I've grouped this one a little differently. I've grouped this by the part of the plant that's affected. So starting with the leaf spots, there are several fungi: pneumonia or Zithia, Neopestiliopsis, also called Neop, and Ramularia, and a bacterium, Xanthomonas, that can cause these spots. You probably won't be able to tell the difference just by looking at the symptoms, but once they're incubated in the moist chamber and in the case of the fungi, they start growing out, you'll see some differences, like the amber colored spore droplets in the case of pneumonia versus the little clumps or even tendrils of the black spores from Neopestiliopsis, which has been the big thorn in the side of strawberry production for the last few years, and not just North Carolina, but in the whole region. Ramularia, less common, and Xanthomonas, that's pictured there. You won't see anything as far as fungi growing out because that's a bacterium. It is called angular leaf spot, though, so spots being angular would be a clue there. Moving to now the crown rots, and you can see where the crowns were cut here, and there is discoloration at the base. Calototricum, a fungus, is one of the causes. Phytophthora, a fungus-like organism, or oomycete or water mold, is another, and that will also cause a root rot. And Neopestiliopsis, another phase of this would be the crown rot, and the top symptoms, of course, consequence of the decay there in the crown. In the fruits, we can get a number of actors working there and causing fruit rot. So botrytis, Neopestiliopsis, once again, Calototricum again, pneumonia, and Phytophthora causing a disease called leather rot. You would again need to incubate these and examine them microscopically to be sure you knew what you had, or at least I would. And with botrytis, it's fairly easy because of the typical gray mold that develops over time. Let's return now to our mystery photo, and those who answered, the majority did have it right. This is in fact strawberry, but what is going on? It's not a bioengineered plant. It is a disease. So this is one of the phytoplasma diseases of strawberry. There are several, one of which is called multiplier disease. You see that on the left there, where you get multiplication of multiple crowns developing, you get stunting. Another symptom you can get with phytoplasma in strawberry, such as, what's it called? Strawberry green petal. So that's a possibility here on the right. It's not the only possibility. You'll notice both the virescence, which you have petals that should be white and they're green right here, but they still kind of look like petals. and the phyllidi, the achenes becoming leaf-like structures. It's kind of scary looking, actually. So these would be an indication that you have a phytoplasma infection in your strawberry. Again, incurable, and it's time to remove. So let me, before I jump into the BOLOs, take a quick look at the chat. Let's see. Someone posted about the white pine blister rust, right, with the ribes. Yes, I was sharing my screen. I didn't sure. Okay, spotted wing Drosophila, small fruit information. Okay. Barb, you didn't say in which case, if plants are in raised beds, do you suggest removing soil in the case of which particular disease? And while you're replying to that, let me jump into the BOLOs, which will be brief and they'll look a lot like last year's. So for our months to come, from late April to late May, what should we be looking for in the garden? Well, one thing, and it's currently active, would be our Exobasidium leaf gall on camellia. And I know this because I was out picking these, quite a few actually, off of our sasanquas this past weekend. Or was it earlier? Anyway, it was
I was
recently.
too late. They're already spoiling.
Uh, I'm patting myself on the back this year because we got ahead of it. Um, and yep, hopefully we won't have too much or have less of a problem next year. So pick these off before the white buzz develops on the underside and the spores go off and do their thing, infect or hang out until next year. And I'll mention another exobasidium in a moment. Also, rose rosette, that new growth, is it elongated? Is it staying red longer than it should? That not losing the juvenile red color? Those are your first indications of rose rosette before you start seeing the witch's brooms and the hyperthorniness, which may or may not be present, or the I don't know how long it takes for the excess thickness to develop, where the new cane is actually thicker than the parent cane, but that is a for sure symptom of rose rosette. Powdery mildews will be starting to become strong. I think I've seen on euonymus already. Of course, crepe myrtle is another one that's susceptible cultivars, of which may get hit pretty hard with, but there are many, many other plants as well. Here's the Exobasidium leaf gall on azalea, so a different species, or maybe even multiple species, but not the same one that's on camellia. It usually shows up a little bit later. Those galls can be somewhat hollow, concave, convex, so a little bit different and on a different host, but again, a cosmetic problem. Black spot and Cercospora leaf spot, which has gone through, the fungus has gone through several name changes now. But these are things that will be showing up on our rose bushes, at least on susceptible cultivars. And to point out a few orange things that you may see during May, muscadine vines may develop a slimy orange sap, and this will coming like from pruning cuts, from winter injury as well. And it's more of a concern if it's on the main trunk and indicating a crack, from cold damage or other injury. So this is they may eventually decline or die from secondary infections, or it may just be necessary to cut down to a stump. These from comments of Bill Klein's in a previous sample of this type. Blackberry rust, we've already talked about, the cane and leaf rust, the cuneola versus the orange rust, the gymnoconia. And another orange thing to be on the lookout for will be the bright yellow to orange spots on our apple and crabapple leaves as the cedar apple rust develops from the infections that occurred from those teleal horns, which were also orange. Another rust on pine. Now, this is not the the white pine blister rust that we worry about planting the ribes species around as an alternate host. This one has its alternate host on oaks, but we may see, in this case, dry orange spore masses coming out on galls on pines. This is a picture from April 24th, 3 years ago here in Wake County. In the vegetable garden, look out for herbicide injury, that classic symptom of the bleached out bases of leaflets on tomato. That's when you can diagnose yourself. That was glyphosate. Over and under fertilization, bacterial leaf spot on pepper and tomato. Check your transplants carefully. Early blight could be showing up on tomato, and as the thrips move in from the weeds, we could get the tomato spotted wilt virus transmitted by them. Photo in the lower left here. And if you're thirsty for more BOLOs, on our webpage, we've got the link right there at the base. Strawberries entities, should soil be removed? I don't know of any strawberry disease off the top of my head where soil removal would be the strategy. Getting the debris out for sure, the dead material, but I don't know enough about, especially this Neopestaloceopsis, which is new, as to how that would survive. So I can't give you a very good answer on that. Should Juniperus virginiana, red cedar, be removed due to red cedar rust? Well, it is the alternate host for apples, crab apples, and some other rusts for things like quince, for things like serviceberry, for things like calorie pear, which hopefully people are moving away from. Whether or not, well, in the case of the cedar apple rust, you might want to consider it if you've got some apple trees that are valuable to you, but you'd have to get it pretty far away. So unless you own very large property and you have control over a good distance around your apple trees, it may not actually be that effective. I do know the property right next to where I take my car for service has a cedar tree with lots of galls on it, and their little apple tree that the mechanics shop has is hammered every year. So there is something to it. Matt, that hellebor's, oh, you've already answered that. So I will stop screen sharing and turn it back over to Matt for critter bolos.
All right. Thanks, Mike. All right, I'm going to talk to you about, let's get this all ready. All right, I'm going to talk to you about some arthropod bolos. Show this full screen. All right, hopefully everyone can see me or see the slide. Okay, so things are ramping up. It's getting warm out. Things are getting active. So here's some things you might see. So May beetles, not just because it's May, but because it's warming up. These are Phylophagus species. I consider they kind of like nut-like beetles. They kind of look like little nuts. Brown, reddish brown, dark brown, black. They're often attracted to lights at night. So, but they're not going to be a pest, basically, typically of anything. There are a few species that feed on foliage a little bit here and there, but they're more of a nuisance when they come to lights in large numbers and kind of die on people's porches. But they'll be emerging soon. You might have new bagworms, young bagworms hatching from eggs that are inside the bags that were tied off last fall. After the females laid the eggs in the bag, they overwintered. They're going to start to hatch and crawl out and start to make their own little tiny cases. So if you have plants that are infested by bagworms year after year, this is when you're going to search for the young. If you do have young, this might be where chemical intervention can help because the larger larvae are pretty immune to it. Lots of garden bugs and caterpillars, of course. So everything's out and active. You're going to find leaf hoppers on your plants, feeding on it, lots of other bugs. Caterpillars are going to be coming out. So just a whole slew of things starting to feed on those plants as the plants start to grow. You may start to see windows or little chew holes in your roses. These are often from rose sawflies. So these are not a caterpillar. They won't turn into a moth. They'll turn into a little wasp-like insect, but they do, they're kind of a main pest of roses. And look for those little windows in the roses, scout for them, and look for some control recommendations online. Again, these are sawflies, not caterpillars, or typically are going to be sawflies, not caterpillars. If you need help identifying which one is which, and sawflies are more common in roses anyway, let us know. You can send in some photos or or look up some information on identifying between sawflies and caterpillars. Galls are going to start to form or expand. So you're going to start to notice more galls on plants. So the fuzzy, pretty puffball galls on white oaks, or these chocolate chip-like galls on witch hazels, whatnot. These are made by aphids. These are made by gall wasps. But lots of different galls you're going to start to see developing on the plants. I just saw some eriophyid mite galls on black cherry out there. They're not yet red, but they're starting to be the green spindles that are coming out of leaves. Galls are typically not a major issue for plants. They're not going to kill the plant or anything. They just kind of cause strange growths or leaf issues. They're not going to typically kill a plant. Of course, on your side, on protecting you and your loved ones, it is going to start to be mosquito and tick season. So wear protective things, wear protective clothing, DEET for mosquitoes, permethrin on your clothes or boots. You following instructions, following the directions will help against ticks and chiggers and mites and things like that. And of course, there's going to be lots of other critters out there. So from beautiful moths to beautiful flies and whatnot. And I'm going to end actually with one thing. I've been getting a lot of messages, a lot of emails about giant hornets, giant wasps. Right now, we have some large queen wasps that overwintered, that are now looking for homes, looking for places to build their nests. The paper wasps are active. All these other social wasps are active right now, and you're going to see these big queens around, and people are going to freak out thinking they're these so-called murder hornets, the northern giant hornet. But just a quick primer on how to identify them. The northern giant hornet has, as far as I heard, been eradicated from the U.S. But it has very small eyes from very far from the back of the head, a completely yellow head. What most people are seeing and thinking are those murder wasps or murder hornets are European hornets. They're very easily told by the brownish red coloration and the stripes on the abdomen having these little teardrops or spots associated with them. The giant hornet, the northern giant hornet, just has very clean stripes on it. And then later in the summer, you're going to start to see cicada killers. When the cicadas come out, these are much different than the other wasps. I'm not going to get into them right now, but this graphic is online on NC State's website for identifying these. Another one to look out for is the yellow-legged hornet. This one is a bit smaller than the others. It does have these yellow tips of the legs. There is a population in Savannah, Georgia, and in the surrounding area. So in the coming years, if they don't eradicate that, we'll be looking out for that. But just know that these two wasps in the center, the European hornet and the eastern cicada killer wasp, are well established or native. Native is in the cicada killer case, or European hornet, been here for over 150 years. They are here and exist here. So don't freak out. Look at these guides. If you're having trouble, you can email me, but I think they're clear enough to identify the differences between them. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and I'm going to share. Charlotte recorded the Plant This, Not That. And let me see. Let me start sharing and see if you can hear the audio. Hopefully, you can hear the audio.
Glade wild indigo, Baptisia elegans, which has these beautiful dark purple flowers and is more common in the Piedmont. The white false indigo, or Baptisia alba, is one of a couple of different white flowered species found in North Carolina and is common in the Neuse River Basin. And then rattleweed, or Baptisia tinctoria, which occurs through most of the state and has a slightly different look. Instead of having those tall spikes of flowers, it has very short spikes of small yellow flowers kind of dispersed over the plant. While these species that occur naturally in North Carolina are sometimes available from native plant nurseries, when you're shopping for Baptisias, you're more likely to find some of the cultivars or name varieties. So many of the varieties we buy and plant for our gardens have been selected because of their flower color or their overall habit. They typically will have flowers that are either white or in some shades of yellow or blue or purple. But thanks to that bee cross pollination, there are some varieties with some slightly different shades of blossom, such as the one you see in the picture, which is known as Cherry's Jubilee, and is often described as having either mahogany or chocolate colored flowers. On top of being beautiful, sturdy plants that are wonderful resources for pollinators, Baptisia is also a low maintenance plant. So after the blooms finish, it will form a large mound of foliage, which just stays nice and green throughout the summer and fall. There is occasionally a moth caterpillar that can eat the foliage, and even to the point of defoliating it late in the summer. This is the Genista moth caterpillar. It is an introduced moth that has moved into our area from further south. On established plants, this typically isn't a problem and not something you need to worry about controlling. If you have a new plant that was just planted this season, you may need to take action to remove the caterpillars and prevent it from completely defoliating the plant. The other thing that happens after the flowers fade is the seed pods form. So you can see the seed pods here in the picture. Each one of these pods will contain 10 or 20 seeds. And if you leave them on the plant, they will fall to the ground, and within a year or so, you'll probably start to get a few seedlings. This is something you can leave if you want to allow it to self-seed, or you can collect the seed pods if you want to try to grow them yourself, or you can simply cut off those spikes and remove them from the plant to minimize self-seeding. After the plant is finished growing and it goes into dormancy for the winter, everything that's above ground breaks off, it disappears. So just be aware in the winter, there's really no presence of the plant, but come spring, it will start to emerge again and start the growth cycle again. I encourage you to learn more about Baptisia and explore the different species and varieties by going to the Extension Gardener Plant Toolbox, where you'll find 10 different plant profiles for Baptisia species and varieties, and you can choose the best for your landscape. We'll wrap up today's program with some statewide Extension Master Gardener program announcements. Starting off with a big heartfelt thank you to everyone who donated on Day of Giving. Thanks to your generosity, we received over $6,000 in donations. And not only does this provide funding that will help us develop resources to support your work across North Carolina, it also unlocked the Extension Master Gardener Challenge, which is an additional $10,000 gift to our Extension Master Gardener Endowment. And that will generate support and funding for the program for years to come. We appreciate everybody who gave on Day of Giving and who has ever donated to our Extension Master Gardener Endowment. We want to give a special shout out to the Extension Master Gardener Volunteer Association of Brunswick County for their donation on Day of Giving. In addition to the over 40 individuals that made gifts on Day of Giving, we also had some of our county Extension Master Gardener programs and local associations, such as the Association in Brunswick County, make gifts. We appreciate everybody who has supported the program and helped us provide more resources and opportunities for volunteers across the state. If you missed our Day of Giving webinar on building a better monarch butterfly garden, the recording is now posted on the North Carolina Extension Master Gardener intranet. You can find it under the continuing education page. This was an excellent webinar. Dr. Dan Potter, Professor Emeritus with the University of Kentucky, shared his research on building better monarch butterfly gardens in our own landscapes and at a home landscape level. This webinar was sponsored by the Extension Master Gardener Endowment. We also want to let you know about the International Master Gardener Search for Excellence Awards. This is an international program that recognizes Master Gardener volunteer work in the United States, Canada, and South Korea. The application deadline is coming up May 1st of this year. If you have group projects in your county that have had educational impacts, we strongly encourage you to consider submitting them to the Search for Excellence Awards. A few weeks ago, some of our volunteers who have submitted successful applications in the past shared tips on how to create a winning application. We encourage you to listen to that recording, which is on the North Carolina Extension Master Gardener intranet on the continuing education page. This will give you tips for preparing a winning application both this year and in the future. The International Master Gardener Search for Excellence Awards are recognized and distributed during the International Master Gardener Conference. This year, the conference is hosted by the Texas Extension Master Gardener Program, and it will be virtual, so you don't have to travel to participate. Registration is now open. The conference will be held August the 25th through the 28th. They have over 90 excellent speakers lined up. When you register, you'll be able to attend the live conference as well as has access to all of the recordings for, I believe, a 6-month period beyond the point of the conference itself. So we encourage every one of you to think about participating and joining and learning through that wonderful experience coming up in August. Another date to put on your calendars for August is the Great Southeast Pollinator Census. This will be August 22nd and 23rd. This is a citizen science project that invites everyone to go out into their yard and to monitor pollinator activity. You'll record that on a special data sheet and then upload it to the census website. It only takes about an hour to participate. There are lots more resources about the Great Southeast Pollinator Census on the webpage listed here. And we want to give a special thanks to Amanda Bratcher, the Extension Horticulture Agent in Lee County, for serving as our statewide coordinator for the Great Southeast Pollinator Census in North Carolina. Wrapping things up, just a reminder that everything Plants, Pests, and Pathogens is on the North Carolina Extension Master Gardener intranet. You can find it on the Plants, Pests, and Pathogens page. This includes the recordings, the schedule, tips for participating, and we hope you will check that out. And the recording from today will be posted there within the next few days. And you can also find recordings from all of our past seasons. Coming up next month, we're excited to feature Debbie Roos, the Sustainable Agriculture Agent with North Carolina Cooperative Extension in Chatham County. For our Plants, Pests, and Pathogens webinar, Debbie will be discussing allium leaf miner, which is a new pest of all of the onion relatives, including the ornamental alliums and the onion and garlic crops. She will talk about her work to identify this pest, educate others, and share recommendations on how to manage it in your gardens and landscapes. We look forward to seeing you next month. That'll be on May 27th. And between now and then, we wish you happy gardening and a very happy spring.